1996. That's when I graduated in maths and computing, and I started work at Lehman Brothers, an investment bank in London. And in those days, they were using VB, Excel, and using Sybase SQL. And I was a systems analyst, or
closer to the mic.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was a systems analyst, programmer, and this is the technology we were using. In '99, I moved to Salomon Brothers, another investment bank in London, and on day one, I met Patrick Burns, who was in the same office. And so, if anyone knows Patrick Burns, he wrote the poetry, an R is missing there, I just noticed, and the R Inferno. So somebody who knows S+, and worked at Mathsoft in the 80s and 90s and knew AS language very well. So it was day one, he sat me down and he said, we use S+ here. And I said, what's S+? So he showed me, and he showed me the prompt, and he created a data frame. It was the very first thing he did, he typed this in. So there's a data frame, got two columns, ABC and 135. So I said, wow, that's a set of columns. He said that actually. It's a set of columns, all columns are the same length, that can be different types. So I said, okay, that's like a database table, isn't it? That's what I've been using in SQL, Sybase SQL. That's great. I get it. But it's much simpler than SQL. I didn't have to type create a table and then fill in the data using insert statements. So Pat said, that's right, it's just one step. So I said, show me more. So Pat then typed this, he typed df 2 to 3, comma, and that selected the row numbers 2 and 3. I said, wow, I don't need to create a new column in SQL with the row numbers. He said, nope, the row order is already how it's stored in memory, and that's why S+ is a good time series. So my very first thought, remember this is my first day at Salomon Brothers in London, so I'm trying to show off, right? I caught it quickly. I want to say, right, Pat, I'm understanding this. So now I can type comma, sum B, right? That's going to be 8. 3 plus 5 is 8. And he said, no, can't do that. And I said, why not? He said, well, you have to do it a different way. You have to select the column and put quotes around it, hold down the shift key and press 2 in the UK. Quote is on the number 2. Then set the B column and then wrap sum around it to begin with. I said, okay, but why not? Why can't I do sum B? And Pat's just said, no, it doesn't work like that. So, given I've just joined a big investment bank, I said, why not? Come on. And Pat said, because it doesn't. So what does it do then? Nothing. If you type sum B, it's an error. Object B not found. And Pat said, yeah, I told you not to do it. So I said, well, can we ask S+ to change it? And he said, good luck. And I said, okay, I'll move on. I've got to get some work done. So 3 years pass, and it's now 2002, and S+ crashes. It's not my code, but it's a corruption in S+. So I go to S+ support, and they say, are you sure it's not your code? And I say, yes, here's how you reproduce it. And they come back and say, oh, you're right, we have reproduced it, we'll fix it, thanks. So I say, great, when? And they say, immediately for the next release. I say, okay, when's that? That's in 6 months' time. Okay, well, can you do a patch quicker? And they say, no, only you've got the problem, everybody else in the whole world doesn't have this problem. With an NA corruption. And I say, but I'm working at Salomon Brothers. This has just been bought by Citigroup, which is the biggest financial institution in the world. We paid lots of money to Insightful to fix things like this. And they replied, true, but it's still just you. So I continued. I said, okay, I understand that, I'm just me. You just send me the code for S+, and I'll fix it. I don't mind, I'll just do it for free. Hell, I just want to get my job done. And they said, well, we'd love to, but I'm not allowed to. The lawyer says no. So then I'm stuck then. I'm in a work environment, I've got to get my work done. So I go to Pat, who's the local guru and the expert, and I say, well, what can I do about fixing this NA corruption in S+? And he says, have you tried R? And I say, what's R? This is now 2002. I took the code I had in S Plus and I pasted it into R with virtually no changes. What that piece of code was doing was generating random portfolios, and it was doing that in a for loop because necessarily it needed to be a for loop because of the way the randomness added up to 100%. It picked stocks, gave them a random weight, and so it is iterative by nature. So not only didn't it crash, but it took 1 minute instead of 1 hour. It's in 2002. So being curious, I didn't believe it and checked it, and it was all right. So I found out why, and that's because back then, this is 12 years ago, our core team had optimized for loops, and if you go back through the archives, you can see that they were quite proud of that at the time, and indeed it was. It made a huge difference. And the other reason R was much faster because it's been in memory, and S Plus, I don't know what happens now, but at that time, not only was it copying, but when it copied each object, it would do it on disk. So you all complain about R speed now. Imagine this back then. It's copying. It used to copy up to 11 times sometime in some situations. And S Plus released one version which reduced from 11 copies to 7 copies 10 years ago. Anyway, so I moved to R and I was hooked. So even better, I'm not saying that R is going to be more stable than S Plus, but if it does give an error, I can fix it. I've got the source code now. And if I don't know how to fix it, then I can hire somebody else to fix it for me. I remember I'm at Citigroup, so it's a big company and they like paying consultants to do stuff quickly. So I've got options now, I can get my work done. And I don't have to wait 6 months for the next release of S Plus, and I don't have to convince somebody on the end of the phone that I deserve to have a fix or a patch for me. I'm independent now. And R has packages. So I start to use R. So I go back to my very first thought that I had on the first day sitting next to Pat Burns. And I go back to him and say, well, can we make some B work then? They can do packages, and R is all about contributing back. Pat said, good luck. So time passes, and it's now 2004. And I join a new firm, and they don't have S Plus. So I just start to use R exclusively without S Plus at all. And I just do it. I just create my own subset method, square bracket, and make some B work for myself. So everything's a function, even square bracket is a function. So you can mask the square bracket method on data frame. And it worked. It's quite simple. Substitute, eval that, and eval it within the scope of the data frame. And now I'm happy. I can do what I originally wanted to do, my very first thought. And that's only possible in R because R uniquely has lazy evaluation. That argument, the second argument inside square brackets, doesn't get evaluated until you want it to inside the method. So if you write a new method, you can change it. You can't do that in Python, and you can't do that in Julia. So then at day 2, I do the same thing for I. The second argument is j, the first argument is I. So now I can do subsetting by using column names as variables. So this is select from the data frame where the region is the US, sum up the population. Easy to write, easy to read. Population is a column name, region is a column name. Day 3, then I realised I wanted to group by, so I wanted to select from DF where the region is the US, the sum of the population by state. So simple, I can read it out in English in a presentation in front of lots of people. It's one line. And then I realised on day 4 that chaining comes with group. I didn't have to do anything extra. So that's the same statement. Now I've just deliberately pressed return after state, which is a column name of data frame, so that the line continues. Typed a new closing bracket and opened a new one. And because the subset, or the inside the square bracket query, because that returns another data frame, I can do another one. I can tack it on the end. And if you think about it, ordering a data frame is really selecting all the rows by row number in a different order. So you just pass order into the first I argument of another data frame query. So population again is seen in the scope of I, minus to reverse the sort so that the largest comes first, and then order returns you the numbers of the rows, and then you select them. And so now it's starting to look like a bit like SQL, where you put the order by at the end of your expression. So now time passes and it's 2008, and I release it as a GPL package for R, which is what we're supposed to do. I'm a user using R in big businesses, and I'm contributing back. So there's a general form, the 3 arguments, where, select, and group by, and then chaining by just tacking extra queries on the end. And this is in 2008. And then 2011, I realized that it'd be nice to do updates and change items of the data frame. But, oh, I didn't say that, yes, so when in 2008, it became data.table. So that it inherits from data frame. So the DF has become DT there at the beginning of the line. So in 2011, I've got the same general form, but in SQL, when you do a select from a table, and then you want to change it, so you want to do an update instead, what do? You just change the select keyword to the update. So let's just do the same thing, and let's do stuff you want to update in J as well. And the advantage of that is you can combine your update statement with where and group by, and do things by group and select. This list we've been doing already. And in that, I just looked back earlier today and looked at the news file for version 6163. This is the example I gave. So looping, we do need to loop sometimes. This statement, df, it's okay, I'll keep going. So the first line, df I, 1, assigned I, that's standard R. Looping that 1,000 times, 1,000 isn't that long, it took 600 seconds. Doing it in the data table way and doing an update statement in J took 1 second. So now I can start, I'm a bit freer to use for loops now. So then 2012 is the Stack Overflow question. So this was quite typical of the time. So here's somebody with a data frame of 35,000 rows and 7 columns, so pretty small. Genomic data. So remember, I'm in finance at the time. And they're using apply and do.call, and it's taking 30 minutes to run. And you look at this code on screen, and at first glance it's difficult to see what it's doing. And then there's a do.call and rbind afterwards. So this closing comment, I'm certain I'm doing something wrong to slow this down. I haven't waited to finish though. I'm sure it can be sure it's being faster. Any ideas? So the data table answer is this. So use data table, and there is the syntax and selecting. Now we can see what it's doing. So you've got DT, open bracket, comma. So the way I read that is there's just no where clause. It's doing it for all the rows in DT, and I select the min, max, mean, sum of various columns, and do that by key. And the key is up at the top with gene ID. So by gene, it's doing something. It's calculating aggregate of 5 things. So that's quite easy to read already. And the user's reaction was, wow, data table's awesome. It took 3 seconds for the whole thing, so in 2012. Versus 30 minutes plus before. So we're talking about time that you can make a cup of tea, you can have lunch in 30 minutes. This is serious amounts of time. This is not many seconds. We're not really interested in speeding up 1 second faster than that. We're not interested in even 10 seconds down to 1 second. We're talking about serious amount of time, which is 30 minutes. For one single task, not repeating in a loop the task over and over again and then reporting the mean and standard deviation of the operations. We're talking one task, just doing one task. So this brings us up to the present day. So here we have File reading. So this has been a long-standing bugbear of the R community. So if you try and read a 50 megabyte .csv file, 1 million rows, 6 columns, read CSV takes between 30 and 60 seconds. We've all realized this when we first started R, and it's something that anybody who's coming to R from another programming environment experiences very quickly as well if they scale up to 1 million rows. And then you go on Stack Overflow and you find that the advice is to, well, that's a bit silly. You can't just read CSV at test.csv. You've got to pass in extra arguments and help it out by telling it what the column classes are and what the number of rows are, and then it's faster. And you've got to read the R import export manual and follow the advice there and do all that stuff. And then it's 10 seconds. Well, that's true. That is a lot faster. But it took a lot of effort to, how do you work out the column classes if you've got 100 columns? So F3 makes it's friendlier because it works out the column classes and the number of rows for you, and it reads the file in different ways. So that's 3 seconds without even having to go to extra work. So it's friendlier and it's faster. And then it scales up, so we're talking 20 gigabytes of data files here. 200 million rows, 16 columns. So read CSV, well, that really does, with all the ... there means with all the tricks of setting n rows and call classes, it still takes hours. I put hours because I waited an hour and it hadn't completed yet. So this is on a large machine with lots of memory, so I don't actually know what the exact number was. So fread reads it in 8 minutes. So that is a fast time, but it's measured in minutes, and you don't have to repeat that. All our benchmarks, we think it should be a pain to run a benchmark. It should be onerous for the package developer to run the benchmarks, because each run of each command should take a long time, because we're trying to speed up single tasks that each take a long time. And you must scale up the data size to be large, and 20 gigabytes is quite large. So quite a few data table users have over 200 gig I'm out of time. Okay, of RAM. So update by reference using colon equals in the J. That's an update by sector, so you can add market cap. Very easy. The 3 parts of queries inside square brackets just on one line. Deleting a column by reference can just zap it, because it just zaps the column pointer. You don't have to copy all the columns you don't want into a new object. And if you do want to copy 20 gig of a data table, then you explicitly call copy. The support, there's 1,500 questions on Stack Overflow, so your question has probably been asked before. And I put the support because, remember, my background is with S+ and Insightful and professional software support. So everyone says, well, it's open source, what about support? Well, there it is. So there are 20% unanswered questions in the last 7 days. And overall time, only 8% have been unanswered. And then this is just one little view into one of the features of data table and keys. So this is a feature called rolling to the nearest value. So you set key this data table by X and Y. So it's keyed by the X and Y column. It's a little bit like a turbocharged row names. So you don't have to have just a single column of row names, you can have several. And each column of the key can be a different type. So here we've got a 2-column key, where we've got character and integer. And here we're joining to this data table, and we're joining from the I clause, and it's a bit like using a row name. Row name, you would just pass in the character. A would normally join to the row name called A. Well, a key is exactly the same. Here we do use dot to, let's say, like a list of things to get the 2 types together. So we'll join from A to the first column of X, and we'll join to the A group, and then we'll look for 7 and binary search to the ordered column, and we find 7 falls in a gap between 2 and 9. And when it falls in a gap, the roll argument tells you what data table should do, and this is one of the options, the roll to the nearest. So it says, is 7 closest to 2, or is 7 closest to 9? And in this case it returns, that's 9, and it returns the second row. You can also roll forwards, so that would be rolling 2 forwards, and it would be 2, because the prevailing observation would be 2. and you can roll backwards, and you can do a limited roll. So if that value was within the last 20 days, it would return the value, but if it was more than 20 days ago, then it wouldn't. So that's how you can stay on this of data efficiently, which is something I needed in my work. So there's not much to learn. There's the manual page. You can learn by example by taking example data table, and then you can look at the comments in the examples alongside the data as it comes back. And there's no methods or functions to learn really. Once you've understood the way the three arguments, the three parts of queries work inside square brackets, you can just build it up and use that as you would. You can use base-R functions within those arguments. And the links, if you'd like to follow up, they've moved to GitHub now, and the readme and the history of the news file is on the front page there. You can scroll through. The tag is there. I did a 3-hour tutorial yesterday morning, and the slides are up there now. The slides that were available before the tutorial have been edited, so they've been updated yesterday afternoon. And then my example. That's it. Thank you.